Okay, well, hello and welcome to In Conservation with. My name is David Lindo, also known as the Urban Birder, and I am here today to talk with a very good friend of mine who goes by the name of Dale Forbes. But before I do talk to Dale, just wanted to firstly say that for those who are unfamiliar with In Conservation with, it is basically a series of interviews with movers and shakers from around the world and also around the world of natural history. And some of these people may not necessarily be conservationists per se as a day job, but a lot of them, in fact, all of them, have something really fascinating to say. So it could be potentially someone who's written a book, someone who has been studying all their lives to talk about one particular thing, someone who's just completely passionate. It doesn't matter. I love talking to people who are inspirational and who have something really interesting to say. So that is what In Conservation with is all about. And we've been going now for the last, well, since I think this is 6 years now, because I started In Conservation with during lockdown. I was incarcerated in Spain. I was on my own. My Spanish was just a little bit worse than what it is now. I couldn't talk to anyone, and I was thinking I need to talk to people. So I decided that I will set up a situation where I will talk to people and ask them questions about what they did, and questions that I didn't ask, I didn't hear other people asking those people. So that's what In Conservation's roots are. And since then, it's kind of gone. There's over 220 different interviews on online on my Urban Birder YouTube channel, which you can check out. And this particular season, and the seasons, by the way, run from October until April, so it's actually ending in April 26 this year for this particular season. But my sponsors are my good friends there, Koa Sport Optics, and they are the manufacturers of the world-renowned Promenade Series spotting scopes, and also Birds, Wildlife and Nature Tours, who are a company that strives to deliver the best birding and wildlife watching opportunities throughout the world. So they are the sponsors. Thank you very much, guys. And as I said, without any further ado, I am going to introduce you to my good friend Dale Forbes. So Dale, how are you and where are you?
Hi, David. Good to be back on the conservation with. I right now am in Western Austria, in Tyrol, and got a pretty picture behind me that was taken just up the slope behind me, maybe half a kilometer from here.
Are you a skier?
I used to ski a lot. I don't ski anymore though. I spend my time running and playing ice hockey and looking for birds, things like that.
Fair enough.
Writing
Um,
books.
um, for those who might be familiar with In Conservation with, Dale's actually been on before. I believe it was in 2022, and we had a conversation. You had a really fascinating talk, an idea really, which was about, well, you called it birder watching, which was all about studying I guess, the profiles of birders around the world. Fascinating. So if you want to check that out, then go to In Conservation with and look that one up for Dale Forbes. And whilst you're there, please like and subscribe and tell all your friends about it, even the ones you don't like. Tell them as well, because it might make them better people. So Dale has co-authored a book which is called Habitats of Europe, a field guide for birders, naturalists, and ecologists. Dale is a guy that I've known. How long have I known you, Dale?
Almost 20 years. I would guess 18 years.
Wow,
17, 18.
it's amazing. Well, Dale grew up in the forests and savannas of South Africa. He's a truly international man, actually. He's grown up in South Africa, and after getting your MSc in zoology, you moved to Central America. Whereabouts in Central America did you
I
go?
was in Costa Rica for 3 years, and then I moved to Honduras.
Honduras. And you worked on Scarlet macaws,
Correct.
as
Yeah.
well as whale sharks. What did you do with the whale sharks?
Uh, I did all sorts of things with whale sharks, but I was by the end, I was switching to trying to understand the behavior of whale sharks, but particularly with respect to tourist boats, because there were some guidelines about how to interact with whale sharks coming out of Australia and other places, but they didn't. They seem to make sense logically, but in practice, they weren't really working very well. So I was trying to understand how human interactions affected whale shark behavior and how we could then stop affecting them in a negative way, but have them approach us. And so at the beginning, whale shark encounters were just like fleeting moments. And by the end, I spent hours in the water with whale sharks. They're just hanging out with us, and it was fascinating.
It sounds amazing, actually. And they're obviously massive fish, aren't they? The world's largest fish, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah. They are truly enormous. I've never seen any truly really big ones, but 12 meters,
Yeah, well,
12
that's
meter fish,
impressive. That's
that's big.
impressive. Um, Most people know you for your, or seeing you wearing your Swarovski optic hat. Obviously, a brand that's probably the biggest, if not, it is the biggest brand when it comes to binoculars and telescopes for birders and other nature lovers. You've been with them since 2009. You're now the head of marketing strategy and insight. I get the marketing strategy bit, but what's the insight bit? What does that
Oh,
mean?
inside is like data science. Like, how do we get data to inform decisions that the business is making instead of just like a gut feel, like, oh, I think we should do this, then trying to get as much data as possible to inform how we make decisions.
Yeah, okay.
So I
Well,
spend a lot of time thinking about data and both qualitative and quantitative research. Yeah, understanding our consumers, because the better we understand our consumers, the better products we can make, the better we can serve them. That's the whole thinking behind it.
that's interesting because, I mean, I'm not going to go too much into this, but I was one of those people that in the beginning didn't understand how optic companies work. I thought it's knocked out a pair of binoculars and that was it. But obviously, a lot of thought goes into it. Some brands more than others, I must say.
Well, the thing is, we're having to invest millions and millions into developing products, and so you want to make sure that these products are useful, like good.
Fair enough. You are involved, or you were involved at BirdLife. In fact, you are involved at BirdLife International, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm still on the advisory board of BirdLife International. Joined in 2017, I want to say, and it's a group of individuals that kind of helps the CEO and the um, top management in strategy, thought, development of the organization, sounding board stuff. It's awesome. It's an
Yeah.
amazing organization.
Yeah. And also, you're the regional coordinator for eBird in Austria as well.
Yeah, for lack of better other people to do it. Yeah, so there were very few people doing like uh, eBird stuff in Austria, and our filters were horrible. So I put my hand up and started to get involved in that, and then trying to get more and more people involved in taking over the real work, get smarter people than me involved in that.
When you say your photos were horrible, what do you mean? People are posting not very good pictures of birds that they saw.
No, the filters.
Oh, the filters. Sorry.
The filters in the background that are then marking if something was rare or not. For
Right.
example, my home state here in the mountains, we were just running off of the Austria-wide filter with a trigger level of 5,000 gray geese, whereas I might see gray leg goose once or twice a year in the States. Like it's a rare bird here.
Yeah, yeah,
So that our level for grey lag goose needs to be 0 and not 5,000.
yeah. That's fair enough. Um, you're an international man. You got a lot of hats on. Very talented, I must say. How many languages do you speak?
I work in German, get by in English, and I've forgotten lots of languages.
I guess you have a good stuttering of Spanish as well, yeah.
Yeah, I used to work in Spanish, but now I've forgotten a lot of that, unfortunately.
Yeah. I
And
work.
obviously grew up with Afrikaans and in a fair amount of Dutch as well.
So where's I mean I know you live in Austria now, but where do you consider yourself from really? Or are you a child of the earth, or do you kind of align yourself with one particular nation?
Nah, I couldn't align myself with a nation. I like people. I'm just a person. I like people. I like diversity. I really do like different people. I really, really like languages and dialects and cultures in general. I'm just a person.
Yeah, well, that's a good person at that. In fact, I want to tell you guys listening and watching a story about Dale. I mean, this is not a story like, don't worry,
I'm a little scared.
it's just an observation I made. I remember being in Israel. This must have been about 6 or 7 years ago, maybe longer. And I was in a hide, and so are you. And a lady said to me, because I was wearing Leica binoculars at the time, the lady said to me, "Oh, so what are the best binoculars to wear then? What are the best ones?" And I said, "Well, actually, I don't think I answered." And you said, "Well, it's actually whatever you think's best." You kind of made it very diplomatic that you could have been pushing your brand, but you did it in a very lovely way, which made, if I was that woman, I would, it's very, it was a very gentle, I wouldn't even call it a sell. It was a very kind of human answer, which I really respected, but because I didn't know you so well then. And well, I guess I did, but I didn't know that aspect of you. So I was really, impressed by that. So yeah, it's good.
Binoculars should be used, and if you don't like them, then you're not going to use them. So you should choose whatever you like.
Exactly.
I mean, we happen to make the best, but
That's the thing you didn't say at the time. I appreciate it. But we're here to talk about your book, Habitats of Europe. When I saw this book, and it's published by Princeton University Press, good friends of mine too. When I saw this book, I thought to myself, this is really interesting because here is a book, it's basically a guide, as far as I could see, to habitats and how to actually look at habitats. Because I mean, I'm telling you how I felt at the time without reading the book at that point. But I just thought to myself, so many people, especially when you begin watching nature and birds, you don't actually realize how to look. Part of the how to look part of it is actually understanding habitats. And often you don't realize you understand it. It's almost like a spiritual or something that sort of seeps into your head without you even thinking about it. And I've noticed that even more when it comes to urban birding, because the initial thought is, oh, there's no habitat. It's just buildings and steel and concrete. But in reality, there is habitats. In fact, the urbanness is a habitat in itself. But I always saw when I went birding, especially in the earlier days, and well, even now, obviously, but I always saw like elements of microcosms of habitats, which I see in a much bigger way outside of an urban environment. So I might see a reed bed, and for me, it doesn't matter if it's only, a tiny reed bed, it's still a reed bed, it's still a habitat. And what's interesting, and I always tell people this, regardless of how small a habitat is, if you're in an urban area, it still attracts many of the species that occur in the sort of natal habitat that you can find elsewhere. And a classic example, I mean, there's been so many examples of that, but one classic example is when bearded tits, or bearded reedlings, if you want to be official, showed up in central London in Hyde Park in a tiny reed bed. And it was the first record for inner London. And I remember rushing over. I mean, I'm not much of a twitcher these days, apart from when I'm in Extremadura. But anyway, I ran over to have a look at these bearded tits because it was proof that they were happy in their little area because, it doesn't matter to them. They're in a reed bed. It doesn't matter if that reed bed is in a massive, expansive reed bed in Poland or a tiny reed bed in urban London. It's still a reed bed. So, without, I mean, having not read the book, did I get the gist of what you were trying to do initially?
Yeah, so I suppose it was noticing that lots of birders went through the world and were just looking for a bearded reedling and not necessarily thinking about what habitat are they in, what niche are they trying for. And when we start to think about wildlife from the perspective of what their needs are, then first of all, we're starting to see other things, but also it would just get better birders. We get better at finding the stuff we're wanting to see.
Okay. Well, you got a little presentation. Maybe you should show us
I
that
do.
so that we
I'll show
can.
you some pictures and so you can
Yeah.
get a feeling for the book. But first, I'm
Yeah.
going to start with my background, and I I just happen to have this as a background in Zoom. But when I was looking at it, I started to notice how I can pick out where birds would be on the picture. And that's the thing. A few years ago, I was doing a course on like an introductory course to bird watching at the company, and we were doing a section on mountain birds. And I had a picture like this, and I was just saying like, oh, this is where you'd find that, and like, as where I'm sitting right now, like it smells like alpine accenter. There is an alpine accent within 40 meters of me. Like I swear it. It's just there. I know it's there. You just have to find it. But it's right there because this habitat right here is absolutely perfect for them. Snowfinches might be flying through, white-winged snowfinch. But then here behind me there is like a dwarf pine, and if we were there, we'd have lesser whitethroats. They'd be clappering away. That's exactly where they are. They love that habitat. Also, the little red poles. And then the open grassy areas. So here there's some like, I'm going to try to get my hand in. Over there is some flat grassy areas. The flat grass, that's where the water pipit is. So they like flat grass, no rocks. But if you've got a few boulders strewn through, like here, needs to be fairly flat. Northern wheatear. So that's northern wheatear territory there. You wouldn't look anywhere else for them. You go exactly to where the birds would be. And what else can I see? Oh, oh, there. That's where we'd look for rock ptarmigan. There, just there. And by looking at a landscape through the eyes of birds, you start to figure out, oh, yeah, this is where we're going to see different things. And birders typically don't see the world like that. I'm going to start sharing my screen quickly because I can show you some pictures. There we go. Can you see my screen?
I can. Yeah, there you go. Lovely rough.
You should see a rough, yeah. So birders typically don't think about habitats and stuff and where these birds are going to be. But it's different with there we go. Butterfly people are quite different. They're thinking about host plants, and so here's a poplar admiral. Have you ever seen one of these, David?
I don't know, because I must admit my knowledge of butterflies is absolutely paltry. What is the range for this species? Is it more the
So
Northern European bird?
yeah,
There you go.
but
A butterfly.
it's one of Europe's largest butterflies and absolutely exquisite. And the thing is that a poplar admiral, you can look for it everywhere, but you're not going to find it. They specialize on aspen. Sometimes they'll go for black poplar, but they need aspen groves mostly, which means that if you're looking for a poplar admiral, you need to find groves of aspen. If you don't have groves of aspen, you're not going to find it. So recently, uh, I've been looking out my area, looking to figure out where good densities of aspen are, because I would like to see this butterfly. And so butterfly people are thinking about habitats and like where they would find their species in terms of the host plants, but bird people weren't really. And out of that thinking, like so a bunch of friends at Tropical Birding, they when they were leading tours, they were saying like how they were seeing on their tours, noticing how birds were matching to habitats. And the more they learnt about that, the better they got at showing people birds. And out of that thinking came the first book, Habitats of the World. And Habitats of the World started to kind of put this into context. And you've seen the World book, David?
Yeah, I have. Yeah,
Yeah. So the World Book had 190 odd habitats. Started us all on this journey of thinking about habitats for birds and naturalist ecologists. But the Habitats of the World project kind of has two major sections to it. There was the one that was to help nature enthusiasts understand habitats, which has been what we've been talking about now. But there's also a scientific side where we started to notice that if we were to be able to tap into citizen science data of birds and habitat specialists, we'd better be able to tell where habitats are. Because right now, a lot of our vegetation mapping is just based on geology or climate models that are then extrapolating out where we think particular habitats would be. But because birds are so well studied, there's so much eBird data out there and Ornithor and other systems. If we were able to access that, we can better understand habitats globally. So there's a whole big science stream of thought that's happening in the background behind the book. But what we've noticed from that first thing is that this book was a good success. We've got a whole groundswell of people, of birders, who are going out there and thinking about what they're seeing, where are they, like what's happening out the frontier and why. And so that first book got a momentum going, and it was really rather popular. And because of that, Princeton came back and we were like, yeah, let's split this out into the continents. So we now have a range of them. We started with North America and Africa, Europe and Australia. These are all out. All four of these are out already. Asia is being edited at the moment, and we've just started writing Central and South America, and the last one Antarctica and the islands of the Great Oceanic Islands. So this is going to be a series of 7 books that go through the world and describe all the continents and all the habitats in a little bit more detail than the World Book could. But a core philosophy behind this is, how do we make science easy to read? So there is a huge ton of science that is being pulled or drawn on and fed into these books, but we want to make it easy to read. It should be fun, because lots of us have day jobs, long day in the office, you get home at night and it's easy to just plonk in front of the TV and you're going to watch your favorite show. Normally Emily isn't spelled like that, but there are copyright issues. So you land on the couch and you're just watching the dumb box. But it's because we like stories. We like to be entertained. And so the thinking behind the book is that, wouldn't it be nice if you could go home at night and you turn on a fire and you get yourself a nice cup of tea and you can just open up this book and dive into stories about the tundra or the mountains or Europe's deserts and just discover the world through a different way. And that was this like grand idea of the storytelling within the book. And it should also look pretty. So lots of big pictures. David, you flip through the book yourself and you'll see like it should be appealing to the eye, easy on the eye. The habitat sections themselves are kind of built like this. We start with the silhouette so that you can see that on the left hand side to give you a feeling for sense of what it's like to be there, and a map where it is. And then there'll typically be some landscape photos so you get a feeling for what this is like. European montane spruce fir forest is essentially what's right behind. Oh, you can actually, in this picture, there's some down here. This is the one behind me is actually the parallel valley to the one in the photo in the book over there. And that first section just tells you about what makes that habitat. So it'll talk about the plants and the geology, but also what makes it different from other habitats in the area. Why do we have this spruce fir forest here as opposed to a mixed forest or a beech forest, or we've also got some subalpine krummholz in the top left hand side of that picture. So what separates it? Why is it like that in different places? And then the next little, so it should give you a feeling for what it's like being there. And the next section then goes into wildlife. And we'll typically focus on what really makes that habitat special. And so in this particular case, we've got a Eurasian three-toed woodpecker kind of hiding on the larch over there, really well hidden. So three-toed woodpecker is kind of a spruce bark beetle specialist. They really like spruce bark beetle, so they're mostly found in spruce forest. But they also have a few very interesting things, like the picture on the bottom left. You see the tree there with these horizontal lines going through it. This three-toed woodpecker actually milks the trees, so they'll milk the spruce and the larch, and in springtime, about a third of their food actually comes from sap from these conifers, which I think is pretty weird. I mean, there are woodpeckers called sapsuckers. I suppose it should have been logical that they're drinking sap, but I hadn't realized that our birds were here doing that, and telling these stories was really important. So within the wildlife section, like what makes that habitat, what stands out, what is it like to be there? Kind of bird focused, but we always talk about birds and mammals. And if there are other creatures in that habitat that are important, then we'll talk about them as well. So this habitat is really important for alpine salamander. Have you seen alpine salamander, David?
I don't think I have. Haven't spent too much time in the alpine areas really.
Yeah.
I've been looking up too much, not looking down.
Yeah. So I love alpine salamanders. They're jet black and they're independent of water. So we think about salamanders and amphibians as being water dependent. These guys are independent of water. They are just wandering off through the forests. The gestation period is 2 to 4 years. So higher up in the mountains, it's literally taking 4 years for a youngster to develop before it's born. And they give birth to live young. We've got a female that's about 12 centimeters long. And when the babies are born, they're about 5 centimeters long. They're almost half the length of the female. She's got these 2 wombs, and 2 babies develop each side of, like, in each of these wombs. I mean,
Amazing.
this absolutely fascinating. And so we try and tell stories like this, that you're just flipping through, and within each chapter you should be learning stuff like, wow, that's interesting, but also told in a way that's easy to read. There aren't a lot of invertebrates that are specialists of this habitat, but if we switch to like lowland heath, for example, smooth snake, bottom left, in the UK, that's almost only essentially only found in lowland heath. We also have, we've got emperor moth, a caterpillar on the right hand side there that's really into heath in this case, but butterflies. So we'll talk about any invertebrates that are important to that habitat as well. In this case, we've got my favorite butterfly, arguably my favorite butterfly, the silver-studded blue. I have this on my background of my computer, and they've got a fascinating story. So silver-studded blues, really pretty, flutter around normally in groups. So you're in a heathland, and suddenly you come across this like flurry of little silver-studded blues flying around together, and they'll invariably be over an open sandy patch because they need a specific species of ant. Well, actually 2 species of ant. They need those ants, and so the adults will be looking for the ants, and the ants need sandy ground, sandy open ground. So a densely grown heath, you're not going to find silver-studded blue. You need ponies or cattle or something to be moving through and opening up this open ground so the ants can be there, and then the butterfly will lay its eggs near to the ants, and the ants will actually carry those down into their nest, and they'll protect them. And the caterpillars, during the day, they'll be protected by the ants in the nests. At night, they'll come out and feed. And then as dawn is coming, the ants will guide them back into the nest. And the caterpillars are producing like an amino acid rich sugary substance that the ants are feeding off of. So they're also getting something out of it. But they're both working together in harmony. So you need... the butterfly needs the ants, which need the open sandy ground, which only comes from having cattle and animals moving through and destroying, like this destructive element in the heath. It all fits together, and they need that. Right, we think about like cattle and ponies as being non-native and like they shouldn't really be there, but actually it's because this is what is native, and this is European wildlife. So this would have been a European savanna. We've got a narrow-nosed rhinoceros in the front. So the Europe had cold adapted species and temperate adapted species, like warmer adapted species. And of the warmer adapted species, we had two species of rhino. We had this guy, the narrow-nosed rhino, which had a broader lip. It was a grazer. And then we had Merck's rhinoceros that was a browser. We got rid of those. We also had an elephant, so a straight tusked elephant at the back over there. This was the largest elephant, and this is native to Europe. And we also had steppe bison, Vicent, and wild horses, European wild ass, water buffalo, aurochs being the predecessor, well, the animal from which our cattle came. So we had lots of big fauna moving around through Europe that was keeping Europe open. And more than half of Europe would have been savanna or grasslands. We know this now. Like this climate, more than half Europe should be savanna and grasslands. We need these destructive elements. And they would have been playing the role that now our cattle and sheep and horses are doing on in many landscapes. David, you live in Extremadura. We've got cattle and sheep and things through the dehesas. The dehesas need that. It's now a cultural landscape that is being managed by people and pigs and cattle and things, but it was these guys that were doing the same ecological role, which is why the dehesas are so important for biodiversity now. And if you take people out, then the dehesas deteriorate. You can't take people and cattle and all these animals out, they deteriorate. If you put too much in and industrialize it, they also deteriorate. So you need this like balance in between. Anyway, so I took that whole like little segue to talk about megafauna, and we in the book this is kind of thrown into like side boxes where we'll allow ourselves to go down these other little rabbit holes talking about prehistoric Europe, because that's important to where we are now. We also have side boxes on conservation issues and other things like that. Just kind of rounding off the picture of how we understand European habitats. So this has been the European book was many years in the making, many exciting years in the making, kind of discovering more and more and more about the diversity we have in Europe. And it really opened my eyes to what we have in Europe. And I came out with such an amazing wonder for our continent. We've got all these different biomes, from deserts and high mountains and tundras in the north, and then great savannas and grasslands. And we've got so much happening in Europe it's easy to think that, well, it's just the Amazon that's got biodiversity or that's interesting. Like, we've got so much here in Europe. And we've also, on top of that, got so many people who are interested in wildlife. We've got millions of people who are interested in birds and wildlife. And I came out with such a sense of hope of like, yeah, we can do this. Like, we can get together and we can do this. We can, like, conservation is possible. And there's so much to save and so much to enjoy when we're out there.
Oh, is that the
That was it.
okay,
Those are the
brilliant,
slides I wanted to show.
brilliant. I was still soaking up what you were saying actually, and it's great to end on a positive note in that there is so much that we can share still. One question actually, I mean, I'm hoping that this series of books and this one in particular as well will encourage people to look around, not just to go, I'm just looking for birds, for example, but to actually notice the environment they're in and also notice other animals. Because do you think that most birders, for example, don't really think about other aspects of natural history and just focus on looking for that particular bird or whatever? Do they look at signs that there's other things around? So if there's other things, that means that the birds could be feeding on them. Do they think that way?
Maybe, but we do know that about 92% of birders are interested in other taxa as well. They might not have the same level of knowledge. They might not know as much about dragonflies or damselflies, but they're interested in it. And there is this interest that is peaked. They're already interested in birds, which are part of this whole. But to your point about piquing interest, like, that's kind of the hope of the book. That we we've got people on birds, and so that's the book does, or these books do kind of focus on birds. They've got a lot of attention on birds, but if you look around, I mean, you're always saying look up, but if you look around and you're looking at all these other things, like how the habitat fits together, and like, oh, let's throw in a story about a salamander, and let's throw in a story about this like weird caterpillar doing weird caterpillar things. Like, maybe we can pique people's interest to be thinking about ecology as a whole, because that's what conservation needs. We need ecology as a whole.
You're a very positive man, but creating these books, was it a little bit depressing given the amount of habitat destruction we're looking at across the world?
Oh no, I went the other direction. I started off thinking like, okay, I'll do Europe. This is just about the most boring continent you could possibly think about doing. Like, oh, it's just all messed up. Like, just people. Like, what are we just going to do anthropogenic? Just croplands. And like, I wasn't that extreme, but I started off thinking like, I mean, I come from Southern Africa. I've spent a lot of time in Latin America. I've traveled all around the world, and Europe did at the beginning feel like the least exciting of the books to do, but I completely went the other way in that I discovered the diversity that we have here and uh, how much positive stuff is happening. We've got a lovely little info box about rewilding Europe. They're doing amazing things, like really cool things. And even in agriculture, interesting things are happening that we're starting to understand that we can generate food security but still have a positive future for the planet. That there are ways to be able to have uh, like feed our people and cover our needs, but still have wildlife. It's not easy, and we've got a uphill battle there. But I came out very optimistic out of the entire process.
What about the urban elements? I mean, urban. I mean, the battle I have in my work is convincing people that there is wildlife to be seen, because so many people are blinkered thinking that you need to be in the middle of nowhere or watching David Attenborough programs before you can even see anything, and they don't realize that even if they have a small garden, they can do something to actually help biodiversity. So, how did you address the urban sort of aspect of it all?
So we've got a chapter on urban, but urban could have taken many books. Like we really could have expanded it. Like you've been a great prophet of this for decades now, but urban isn't just urban. There is so much diversity, and you actually started off talking about these like niches and microcosms and things, and that's how birds see stuff. And so we need diversity. Uh, Lawn isn't bad. Just lawn is bad. Uh, a like a monoculture of anything isn't good, and a monoculture of just buildings without any green, that's also not good. So you that diversity is what makes it. And so if we've got there are many great parks in our cities where we have a mixture of like short crop grass, which is kind of what those rhinos and sheep, aurochs and bison were doing. So short crop grass is not necessarily bad. If you've got some trees growing through it, you've suddenly got a savanna, and then you've got a. You spoke about a reed bed early on, so you've got a duck pond. If it's just like concrete and boring, like that's not going to do much for wildlife. But as soon as you got like little batches of reeds coming in there, and then some lilies growing up, and a little bit of scrubby stuff on the side where you can have some warblers coming in, that starts to become interesting habitat. And lots of parks are along waterways, and this is a riparian habitat. So our riparian habitats were had beavers and things like that. Beavers would move through and fell trees. New scrub would grow up. It was a very dynamic system. Our waterways weren't like thick, like solid canopy forests as we've kind of developed a modern idea that Europe should be these old, dark forest, thick canopies, but that's a bit of a fallacy. And waterways is a great example where beavers would have been felling stuff all the time, and it would have been a mixture of scrubby stuff, open stuff, and big trees. And lots of parks are kind of like that, where they've got scrubby stuff, open stuff, some trees, and that these channels through cities along rivers and streams and stuff are really important for migrating animals who are moving between bigger patches of other stuff. And then they can be moving through that. Diversity is what's really important.
Yeah, because what's interesting, I mean, I've noticed in my travels that in Europe, particularly Eastern Europe, what you're talking about with the parks is perfect. I mean, Germany and Austria and Poland and places like that. You've got parks that are almost extensions of the forest, like sort of fingers that are coming from the
Mm-hmm.
outside, and they're still the forest. But the further west you go, I mean, you go to Britain, and a lot of the parks I walk through, or at least used to walk through, are very manicured. And what you describe is amazing, but what you get in places like Britain sometimes is not that at all. It's all very tidy in flower beds, and the trees are basically often in London, for example, the London plain, and then there's no undergrowth. It's just a tree, then a field and another tree. But what I noticed in my life when I first started watching birds outside of my garden, there was a park down the road from me, and it had a river running through it, but the river was actually concreted. So I always thought for years it was just
Mm-hmm.
a channel. I did see common sandpipers and grey wagtails and my first kingfish and stuff there, but I also saw lots of shopping trolleys and motorbikes thrown in there, and oil spills and things like that. I went back years later. I went back about 10 years ago, and to credit to the council, the river used to be just a straight line. They've made it meander, and they've made it natural. They've taken away the concrete and encouraged, a shoreline. And then all of a sudden there's a reed bed, and then there's plants that are living next to water. And I'm hearing blackcaps, and I'm seeing moorhens. I'm seeing
Oh,
things I've
great.
never
Yeah.
seen there before, which kind of shows you don't have to do too much. I mean, I guess is that rewilding? I suppose.
in the broadest sense, yeah, it's bringing nature back. And so the first you need to have an idea of what needs to be done or what can be done. And then if you know that, well, just a few patches of like wildflowers, or you can let the grass grow taller there, or like scattered around different patches where it's going more scrubby. Like if you know what you can do, then many of these things are implementable. And particularly if you're also helping to educate the public or like inform them what you're doing. And in Austria, there's a huge movement around like scrappy areas, like wildflower stuff. It's not so we used to also have like nice green lawns, traffic circles, green lawn, and verges, green lawn. But now there's a huge movement to have wildflower meadows and to just let stuff grow up, and then they'll trim it once a year or something. So, but it's all about providing habitat for bees and invertebrates and things like that. And we started to do it at the company a couple of years ago, where we also had lots of green lawn and things. But how do we get nature? How do we help nature come back? And so we spoke with the local Botanical Institute from the university and a few other people who know stuff about this, and they started to help us do things. And then as soon as we started to have areas at the company where it was kind of overgrown or the grass got really tall, we had employees who were saying like, "Oh, are you guys just not taking care of it anymore?" Or like, or you and we're asking the ground staff like, "Do you just guys don't care, or you're not doing your jobs anymore?" So like critical questions, and which I mean, some of us who were thinking about were like, why do we get that reaction? And like, but of course we hadn't taken the people with on this journey, and so we started to put signs around our campuses that say like, "Oh, this is on purpose." Like, this is for butterflies, and they're pretty little signs that say it's messy on purpose, and because that's important for wildlife. And but now it's a cultural phenomenon because we've in our region people have learned that this is important, and so your local council who changed the river only would have done that if somebody had shown them, look, this is important to have a river meandering and for these things to happen because somebody had tried it out. But there is another British reference that I want to mention. And have you ever been to Sandringham?
No, I haven't actually. That's in Norfolk, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah. And I was there last year.
Was that a royal invite?
Yeah, we went with BirdLife. We went there, and his grounds managers, like chief farmer, took us around, and he was just amazing. Like what the king is doing on his property is just was so inspirational because they're trying things out, and so he's trying to figure out how can we produce, like use the land for farming, but still be doing this in a way that has potential for wildlife and for nature. And so where previously they had like neat lines, now they've got lots of like curvy lines because this is what the partridges need to be able to duck in. And then they're thinking about how to increase the organic matter in the soil. Like how do they do crop rotation to increase the soil health? And the king's in a position that he doesn't need to rely on his farm to make his money, that they can experiment with things and take a few years, but it takes people like this who have the foresight to experiment with things, try things, fail a number of I'm sure that they're making lots of mistakes, but then you fail and you're learning from this, and they're always thinking about how do you learn from this, because then you can influence others and take others with on this journey and say, look, this is how it works, we've tried this works, and try that, or don't do that. That's not a good idea, like try that. And that's super cool when people are doing this.
Yeah. I mean, in Britain anyway, because that's what the country or the region I know the best really in this respect. For me, it's about education, and my biggest bugbear is the fact that broadcasters like the BBC who put out stuff on natural history, they never or very rarely ever talk about the idea of encouraging wildlife. It's always about here we are in the middle of wherever looking at this that took 5 years to film 30 seconds when we should really be also talking about things closer to home because lots of people, certainly in Britain, 80% of people live in cities and they're disconnected. They don't understand. They look at your image behind you and think, oh, well, that's a holiday, wow, it's
Mhm.
amazing. I'm glad that's there. I'll carry on throwing my crisp packet on the floor and not caring about, the environment. And I think, more needs to be done to educate people, but using the mediums that they all look at, like TV. And that's not done enough. And that's why I think in the UK and maybe in North America as well, certainly in the US, people don't realize that, what they can do, the little things they can do in their yards can really help the bigger picture.
I think that little thing is a key point because oftentimes people won't start with something because they're like, well, what can I do to help save the polar bear? Or like, what can I do these big things? What is my little role? But the point is that even if you've got, say you've got like a little yard, you've got a little garden, like you can do stuff in your little garden that has a significant effect on a robin or on a blackcap or on some butterflies. That's it. And it's not if it's not just one person, but there are thousands of people who are all thinking like, oh, I just do a little bit, a little bit. That's my scale. That's what we need to be doing, and we can't just leave it up to huge organizations or the government or like some well-meaning person. And yes, Leo DiCaprio has got a lot more money than me and he can do a lot more than me, but that doesn't mean that I can't do something.
Yeah. And what you can do is still as important. The other question in writing these books, did you realize that some species, due to habitat changes, are changing their sort of locations where they are, the sort of habitats they use? Did you notice that at all?
Do you mean are they
Like, for
changing their
example, let's
habitats or they're changing their distribution?
or the well, I guess some. I mean, I can't think of anything specifically off the top of my head now, but it's some species I know of. I can't name them, but they've expanded into different types of habitats. For example, actually, I thought of one. In certainly in Spain, I've noticed marsh harriers, the
Hmm.
western marsh harrier, which by definition is a bird that's found in wetlands. But I've noticed them now in areas where Montagu's harriers, which are birds of the arable land, I've noticed them in those territories now. Um, have you noticed anything like that yourself?
I'm just wondering about that particular one though. I would imagine that marsh harriers would still need to breed in reed beds, but that they might be feeding, and that might be an abundance thing. Lots of I don't know about the abundance of marsh harriers in Spain, but lots of raptors have had a massive bounce back since DDT and illegal persecution of raptors was stopped. So in the last 30 years, we've seen a massive expansion of raptors. And what might, I mean, it's just speculation, but it might be that the marsh harrier numbers are so large that they're then spreading out into suboptimal habitats, and they're going into croplands, they're going into the grassy steppes, they're going to other regions which are not necessarily their favored areas, but just because there are so many of them around. Speculation.
It sounds very, fairly reasonable to me, actually, to speculate that.
We
Um,
are seeing other birds that are moving, they're just changing their distribution because habitat distribution is changing, where people are changing habitats or where climate change is moving where habitats are occurring. Then suddenly you're starting to get some birds higher up in mountains or further up into the tundra.
okay. Do you think with these books that having an awareness of habitats will encourage conservation? Or do you think people will just visit for example, a location behind you and think, wow, this is amazing, and then go home and not think about it again afterwards?
I'm hoping so. That's the whole idea. Like if we can get people not just thinking about ticking off a bird off their list. Like I mean, it's fun to see a blue throat, but can you think about like the blue throat's habitat and like where it lives, and that it needs land to live in, it needs habitat to live in, and it's not good enough just for me to have seen it. We're hoping that this sort of broader context grows that understanding of the necessity for habitat conservation thereof. I hope I'm not that naive, but that it actually does have an effect.
Okay. So you got the Antarctica book
But
coming.
if you hadn't drunk this Kool-Aid already, you wouldn't be doing a whole series of in conservation with conversations with people talking about conservation. That's trying to inspire people to
Yeah, I wouldn't know.
it. So you obviously believe it.
Oh, totally, yeah, absolutely. But I'm just talking to. I'm trying to play devil's advocate. Um, you got the Antarctica book coming as well. But what have you got personally planned now? I mean, aside from your stuff with Swarovski, I mean, what's your personal goals at the moment?
Oh, so for quite a long time, I was traveling a lot. I I felt like I spent a lot of time in aeroplanes and like all over the world. And that was wonderful. I discovered so much. I saw so much. Uh, I had spoken earlier in I love diversity of people and languages and food and things like I like kind of being forced to be uncomfortable and like I really enjoy that. But I got to a suddenly I got to like a breaking point where I was like, actually, I don't feel like traveling, right? So at the moment, I like being at home. I like discovering stuff here, like Poplar Admirals. Like right now, I'm all about that. Like come May, like I'm checking out where the aspen are because I want to find a Poplar Admiral here. It was not recorded in many decades. I believe a couple of years ago, somewhere like one in two individuals were recorded in my state. I want to find them, like, and I want to find interesting new bees, and there are a few bumblebees that I really want to find, and just diversity of stuff around here. Spend a lot of time high in the mountains looking for interesting things, looking for flowers, things like that. So
You know,
that's like personal goals, but got a lot of writing to do. Got to write. Central and South America is not going to be an easy book to write. It's complex, and I've spent a lot of time in Central America, particularly in North and South America. So it's going to be fun, but there's a lot of hard work that'll go into that.
yeah, it's funny because I think I'm at the same stage as you because I mean, I've been the urban birder for 20 years this year, by the way, guys. So, if you've got some cakes lined up, let me know about it and please make them not too sweet because, and I love mince pies, by the way. So, anyway, uh, I've been doing this for 20 years and for the first maybe 15 years, I was all over the world, and I was thinking, wow, birds have got me everywhere. And plus, like you, I'm seeing all these wonderful things and some things not so wonderful. But it's an amazing experience. But you get to a point when you kind of think to yourself, I like to just relax a bit now. And my relaxation at the moment is in between Spain and Britain. But yeah, I can totally get what you're saying. And I think when you stop and start looking around yourself, as you say, you find so much more. And also, for me, I'm fascinated. For example, I was in the local park in the city just now, well, not just now, earlier, and I found a wren singing. And wrens I've never seen in my city before. But also, I watched it and noticed, wow, it's actually darker than the ones we have in the UK. And then you start thinking about all those things. You start thinking about why is that like this? Why do they behave differently here? Why is and you start when you start looking at things, you find anomalies. I mean, the other day I posted on Facebook that I found a meadow pipit with a very nice buffy front. I've seen them before, but it makes you start wondering about stuff, and that stuff you wouldn't wonder about if you're traveling around the world because you've got so many other things going on. It's important sometimes to stay at home and try to contribute to the knowledge that we need to gain from being at home, which will hopefully help the global situation in terms of conservation. I think it starts from your house, from your doorstep, in every way. And I think this book is going to really help people to understand that. So I thank you for writing that.
Thank you, David.
What is your favorite habitat, by the way? Before you answer that question, mine, I love wetlands, but what's your favorite habitat?
Yeah, I'm not a wetlands guy. You're like showing your British flowers there. I my when writing the Europe book, Ian and I were fighting over who wasn't going to write the wetlands.
I would have done it.
No, Ian won. I wrote all the wetlands. So Pete did some wetlands as well, thankfully. No,
Why don't you like
savannas.
wetlands? Why don't you like wetlands?
I'm fine with. I love that wetlands exist, and wetlands I think are very special. Wetlands are very special to me because they bring other people joy. Tim Appleton loves ducks, and so ducks are very special to me because they bring Tim Appleton joy. I like savannas. I'm an African boy, but the Europe's oak savannas, I just think are wonderful. So I saw you a couple of weeks ago next to my daughter, and these oak dehisces, which is an oak savanna, they were just like blossoms everywhere. It was just so beautiful, so stunning, and I love this like open and a little bit closed. I can feel a straight tusked elephant moving through there and like bashing over a tree. And uh I do like savannas, tundra as well. Like I'm really into tundra. So here in this area, my favorite habit above the tree line, up high. I need to be like 8, 9,000 feet up, and then I'm happy.
It's interesting because I love wetlands and generally sort of open areas because of the fact that I'm urban. When I was born in London, there
Ah,
weren't forests, so my habitat was just open land.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I learnt as a kid that going to wetlands, you can see ducks. I
yeah,
can see them. So I guess it started from there. For me, birds and other wildlife all congregated, all came to wetlands. So you see
yeah, yeah.
something eventually. My least favourite of jungles and forests, jungles in particular.
Oh,
I'll
really?
be honest, when I'm in places like Colombia or places like that, sometimes I get a bit bored. I
Wow.
know it's sacrilegious and people probably, start sending me hate mail now, but because I think partially because I can't see what's
Yeah,
going on, and secondly, I find it really boring sometimes when someone says, "Look, I'm going to call in whatever," and I'm thinking, this is like being in the supermarket, you know. You see it for 2 seconds and it goes, and then right, what next thing? For me, that's not birding per se. So jungle birding is not my top sort of space to be in. Don't get me wrong. If it turns you on, that's great. I like, it's fine, but not for me. I'm in a jungle in Colombia. I walk past a wetland. I say, "Leave me here. I'll see you later." That's how it goes.
isn't that cool? Different people have different tastes.
It is, and
That's
people don't
great.
realise. People think that birders or natural historians love everything, and of course they do to a degree, but they have their favourites.
Yeah, yeah.
My favourite is not being in a jungle, even though they are very important and they need to be preserved, of course, but they're not my number one. And on that note, I want to quickly say to everyone watching in the future, if you're watching this on YouTube, to like and subscribe and leave a comment. I haven't got all the fancy bits, but you know what I mean. and tell everyone about In Conservation with. I also want especially to thank my guest, Dale,
Thank you,
for
David.
being here because he's a tough man to get hold of. He's a busy guy. It took me a lot of efforts to get him to come here today. So thank you very much, Dale, for being here and being so, inspiring, and also for producing that wonderful book. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, David. It's been fun.
It has been always fun when you and I chat. So, guys, if I can just say this, next time we meet, it will be probably here again, and it'll be another very interesting conversation. But until then, keep looking up.